All right, so you can see I've got pretty much all of the skins off of the framing on the forward part of the fuselage. And I did this basically just so I have a better understanding of what is going on in here between the canopy and the forward fuselage. And I wanted to show you guys again, just to show you some options and to give you an idea of the flexibility that's available in the canopy frame as you're trying to fit it. So with everything stripped down, you can see a little bit better perhaps. Again, this is the hinge for the canopy. You've got this stop block here. So the hinge, when it slides forward, it slides up against this stop block. Now, if you can't get your frame to come forward enough, you'll have to trim this block down thinner, and that will allow this hinge to come forward. But you need to be careful again because, as I said, if you kind of sight down, you can kind of see where your hinge is, and you can kind of look at where the hole needs to be for the hinge. And if you kind of sight down and look at the relationship between the hinge and the hole, you can get an idea of where that hole is going to be in the hinge. If you start cutting this block too thin this way and you start bringing your hinge forward, when you put your hole through the hinge itself, you're going to run out of edge distance on this back side of the hinge. So you need to be mindful of that. And also be mindful of where it sits height-wise, because you don't want the top of it rubbing against this skin. And of course, again, you want to be mindful of edge distance from the hole to the top here. Of course, you can see the relationship between the frame and this angle here where the weather stripping is going to go. Be mindful of that. You want a gap here for the weather stripping to fit. Also be mindful that, again, this is all just a sloppy mess because nothing's attached. Another thing to look at is, here is the hinge that passes through underneath and goes into the blocks. This is the ear or the flange of the hinge, and you can yet again see the relationship between the flange and the frame. Now remember, the skin, of course, is clecoed to the frame, but at this point it's not clecoed to the hinge. So even with the hinge mounted, you still have a lot of flexibility here. So for instance, if you were to get your hole configured in relationship to the hinge, that you've got good edge distance on the hole, you still have some adjustment here as far as how the skin is going to lay in relationship to this flange and this forward skin. And you do that simply by moving this up and down to get the skin to lay correctly, and then you will ultimately affix that position when you match drill these holes through this piece and then locate it. Of course, this is all done with the skins in place, so you can see exactly how they lay one to the other. But with it stripped down like this, you see the relationship between them, and you can see what kind of adjustments I'm talking about. And you can see here you've got left to right adjustment too between the frame and the hinges. So given that information, I've elected to go ahead and try to locate the best point that I can for the hinge holes. I'm going to mark those through the blocks into the hinge, and then I'm going to go ahead and drill those. I'm going to bring it back, put it in place, run the pins through, make sure that the pins will actually go through the hinges. And then I can put this skin back on, and then I'm going to put this skin on, and I'm going to start working on, again, assuming that the hinge is now pinned in place, I'm going to start working on this loose framework to get that skin to lay the way that I want it to through here. There's also a little bit adjustment on the side pieces in relation to the side of the fuselage, simply by putting more of a bend in this tube or flattening the tube. If you flatten the tube, it will bring this side out. Of course, if you put more of a bend, it will bring it in. Vans talks about that in the written instructions. Again, I want as much flexibility as I can get until I get it the way that I want it to be, and I finally put the final rivets in place. That is why I am not going to put any holes. I'm not going to match drill any holes in this tube quite yet either, just in case. With this skin on and with the skin on the frame and the frame in place, I did look, and the holes, the pre-punched holes in the skin were extremely close to my black lines, so I don't think there'll be any issues with that. But again, I don't want to strap myself down with anything permanent at this point. So like I said, this was just to kind of show you an overview of the different relationships between the pieces parts and how much flexibility you have to get things adjusted. Of course, you want to do all of this with the skins in place so you can see real time how they relate to each other, how the seam relates, how the different heights potentially between this skin and this skin up and down. You want to work all of this with them, everything in place, real world, before you decide on drilling your hinges and starting to match drill different things. Again, this was just to give you an overview of what things look like and what you can look for as far as drilling holes, gaps and spaces, adjustability, where things lay in relation to other things. All right, so let me get some holes marked. I'm going to drill these hinges, and then I'm going to come back and start putting some of this together and see how it looks.